Hello, everybody. This is Colleen with Speaking of Spirits. I'm here with my favoriteest peeps, Kate, and Gina, and Susie. Yes. And we really don't know what we're talking about today. Are we going to talk about our first paranormal experience?
Or maybe like a profound one.
A profound one.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like that.
I like that.
Whoa.
Because I don't know if
I'm pretty sure my first ones I didn't know were paranormal.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. So I don't know that I know my first one because it's just been part of my life forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. What's yours?
So for me, because it hasn't been, right, and this is something I've been newly introduced to. So now that I've learned a bit more, I can pinpoint kind of like what you guys were saying, like memories. And I'm like, oh, that was probably something. But my first real one was in a house. I was with a little human, and they were like, hey, Kate, someone's at the door.
A living human.
Yes, living human. Small child. Small
child.
Human.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's like this big window, and they were like, hey, there's someone outside. And I come up, and there's no one here. There's fresh snow. There's no footprints. And they're like, they're staring right at us. Like, can you not see them? And I was like, no. And so inside, like, I'm screaming. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? And she's like, look, they're walking back to their family right now. And I was just like, okay, child's imagination, right? Like, I'm not going to pay attention to it. But within the same month, multiple people who had no paranormal experiences were like, oh, I just saw a man walking around the property, or I saw like someone your animals, or like stuff like that. So that's the first time that I think I really was like, there's like, really, and I started seeing it too, and I could see the shadow figure just walk around the land, and nothing felt bad. Like, I think whoever it was used to be on that land.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like a caretaker, and you'll still see him occasionally. But that was the first time that I was like, oh my gosh, like, I think there's something to this, like, and it's not just a little human's imagination,
right?
Because it's easy to dismiss, but once you see it for yourself, you're like, oh yeah, I get it now.
You are still on that land?
I'm still on that land right now.
Okay, because I can tell you right now, sorry.
No, you're good. Please do it. I love it.
It's neither. It is someone that has passed, but they're not always passed.
Oh, they're not always.
No, you're seeing them then and now. They're having a time slip.
Ooh.
So you're actually seeing that person in their time walking around and doing what they need to do. But in your time, he's passed.
So they're in the future?
No, she's saying you're seeing like a movie past.
But
actual happening.
Yeah, that person is alive still in their time right now.
Oh, so but it's not like a... Okay, I see what you're saying.
It is. In your time, he's deceased.
Right.
But what you... Because this is the...
different dimension.
Yes, yeah. This is the impression, that I'm getting, is that you're seeing a time slip.
Yeah, you're seeing the past instead of the present with the ghost.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
And that is very... Sorry, I'm a mixed bag of nuts. It is very, very possible. I've had that experience more than once in my life. But that's my impression that I'm getting, sorry, the goosebumps, is that you are actually having that time slip on your property.
That's really interesting because the house was built in 2016. Like, there's no record of anyone being there before then.
And it's
out in the mountains, so that's really cool.
Well, here's the other thing.
Out there.
Yeah,
I was going to say we have Native Americans and we have the settler. I mean, this is the Oregon Trail came through here, you know?
Yeah.
All that
there's actually on the Gay Mine, which is not far from here, there's actually the wagon ruts still there. So that's really interesting. What about you?
Well, like I said, this has been a part of my life, my whole life. One of the profound things when I realized that I was different, I was about 12. I tell the story all the time. And I was at the city park with my friends, and it was broad daylight. And there was this creepy guy kind of leaning by the tree looking at us. And I say to my friends, that dude over there by the tree is kind of freaking me out. And they're like, there's no one over there. I'm like, no, right there by that tree. And they're like, there's nobody there. And I'm like, oh, I was just kidding. But he was as plain to me as they were plain to me. And which leads me to my most profound thing. I went to Idaho State University and I had a particular professor who ended up moving to Texas. And he had a daughter. And she'd grown up here most of her life. They moved to Texas. She had a boyfriend. They got in a tragic car wreck and she passed. So her aunt was also a friend of mine. And she called me and said, can you please help me to set up for a memorial? They did her funeral in Texas, but everybody she grew up with is here. At that point, she was 17 or 18 years old when she passed. When they moved, she was like 13 or 14. When I went to school with her dad, she was just a little girl. So I said, absolutely. This was in Chubbuck, the St. Paul's Church. And for any of you that are familiar with Chubbuck, Idaho, or Pocatello, Idaho, St. Paul is a Catholic church. It's kind of hexagon shaped. It was kind of
Now it's
built.
physical therapy. 'Cause
Yeah.
I've been in there.
Yeah.
Did you use a lot of gold in that ceremony? That service?
Brass, yeah. Lots of brass plated and gold plated. Yeah, because we
I
put
just
lots
saw
of
it
photos.
everywhere.
Yeah, it was a really cool church because like a normal Catholic. It's into the ground a little bit there, and we had easels with pictures and different things on it, and had put all kinds of stuff up. And I could feel her. And there was a place where the altar normally was, and they had this large piece of wood suspended by chains. And I could see her sitting up there. And I could see her walking around looking what we were doing. And I didn't want to say anything to my friend because, that's
Right.
what crazy things like that. So I just didn't really say anything. So we get ready to leave, and the memorial or celebration of life, whatever you want to call it, was that evening. And so my friend said, are you going to go home and get ready and come back tonight? And I said, yeah, I'm going to come back tonight. So we're walking to the car with the last box because I took greenery and my silk flowers and all kinds of things, floor easels and table easels, and they were all brass. But something like, you know how you get that weird feeling like you're being watched? So we're outside. I turn back around and there's about a 12-year-old little girl. She's sitting on the roof of the church. And she is in leotard and tights and the little see-through chiffon skirt with her ballet shoes on. And she's kind of sitting in a pose on the roof of the church, which on one side is not that far from the ground, but still, the little 12-year-old girl on the roof. So I turned around and I looked at her and I turned back around and I'm like, that is so dangerous. I need to go help her get off the roof. And I turned back around and there's no one there. And I'm like, okay. And I go and I get in my car and I'm talking to God in my mirror. I'm like, I don't know what I just saw. I think I just saw something. If I saw something, I need a sign, but I don't really want a sign. And I'm like,
How old are you?
point, I was probably in my late 20s.
Okay.
And the girl that had passed was 17 or 18. The girl I saw was about 12.
Okay.
And I'm kind of undone because there was no shimmer, there was no see-through, there was no feeling of it being anything other than a real child on the roof that was in danger. And I'm just like, if it was, you need to give me a sign, and it needs to be a really good. And I'm just talking to my mirror to God. And I get home and I'm like, I can't go back. I can't go back tonight. And so I called my friend Debbie and I said, I'm not going to be able to make it tonight. I'm not feeling good, but I'll be there tomorrow to help you take down. And she's like, okay, we'll be there at noon. It's all right. Don't worry. So the whole way down, okay, if I'm supposed to say something, you got to give me, it has to be a huge sign. And I was so uneasy that I was like, oh boy. Yeah. I was so uneasy. I'm like, there can be no question. This has to be a sign that I need to say something to her. I'm never going to say anything to her because she's going to think I'm crazy. And I get to the church and she's just pulling in, and inside I'm still like, do I say something? Do I not say something? Oh my gosh. She goes, come here a second. I need to grab something out of my car. So I go walking over. She opens the trunk of her car, and sitting in her car is a pair of ballet slippers, a pair of tights, a leotard, and a chiffon skirt. And I start speaking in tongues. There's no, who's that? I don't know. She's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Who's this? What is this? And she's like, well, that was hers when she was a little girl. And I said, like 10, 12 years old. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. And I start just crying. And she's like, what? And I'm like, she was here and she was wearing it. And she goes, really? And I said, so weird. And she was sitting in a pose. She gets in her purse. She pulls out her wallet and she goes, this pose? And it was the exact pose in that exact outfit from one of her dance pictures that I had seen.
Crazy.
And that was her validating. Yes, she was there. And then the aunt, Debbie, starts crying because she's like, I felt her the whole entire time and I kept wanting to say, are you feeling her? But I didn't want you to think I was crazy. I thought I was crazy. I mean, I've experienced this my whole life but it was my first time having an actual, like, I can touch you kind of, and knowing it was weird, but yeah, it was super, super profound. And now I go, well, there probably were a lot of people I've seen that have
Right,
passed that I
right.
didn't know,
Right.
like the dude by the tree,
Right.
you know, that I didn't, was not a breathing, bleeding human. And especially, I think what threw me off the most was because she didn't come across as a 12-year-old. I mean, she didn't come across as her current age that she
Right.
passed at. She came across as a 12-year-old, but it was all like absolute divine timing because the exact thing she was wearing was in the trunk of the car. She hadn't pulled it out. She goes, I was going to put it in there and I couldn't find a place and I didn't know how to display it. So I just put it back in the trunk. And so that was mind boggling, and it takes a lot to boggle my mind.
Meant to be.
You?
Oh boy. I've had so very many experiences. I always knew that they were not alive. My very first memory of encountering something that wasn't human was when I was very
Claire,
Living human?
living human or human entity?
Okay.
neither.
Oh, I got a
Neither.
good story
Oh.
for you too.
Oh yeah, we got lots of stories. I was small enough to have my bottle still in my hand. And this entity, which I knew was evil, was at the basement in my parents' home. Basement, you know, it always would show up when like there was arguing and fighting in the house. And I would see it sitting at the bottom of the stairs, crouched and kind of growling at me, and just always, you know, something awful. The energy that would come off from that would just feel terrible, but I would get angry every time I saw that son of a bitch. Sorry.
No.
And I would take my bottle and I would chuck it at him. That is my first memory of having an experience with one, as young as I was. I've got lots and lots of profound ones. There was one time I got the croup when I was about 8 years old. My chest collapsed. And the next thing I knew, I was in a room full of people all dressed in white. And a lady turned around and looked at me, and she didn't speak, but she told me, you're not supposed to be here yet. It's not your time. And she touched my forehead, and boom, I was right back in my body. I climbed down out of the bunk bed, went and woke my mother up. They rushed me to the hospital, got me breathing again, and then put me in bed with them at night. And as my parents lay sleeping, and I couldn't sleep for the life of me, another being, an entity, all clad in white and glowing, walked into my parents' room, stood in the doorway, was about 3 feet off the floor, and just looked at me and held out their hand. And of course, I was a kid and hid under the covers. I never didn't come back out. But I have so very many of them. One that's actually kind of close to my heart. My mother passed away, and I was really crushed over that. And I was sleeping, and this horrible dream, my mom was still alive and she was on the couch and she was angry because we had buried her. She was dead. Okay?
Oh, man.
Bear with me. She wanted to call a family meeting, very upset, told me to go get her robe so that we could all sit down. I went and got a new robe that I had bought her before she passed away. And she said, no, not that robe. I want my blue one that I used to wear. Very angry. What the hell's going on? And I was so happy to see her, so excited to see her. I went and got that blue robe, and as I draped it over her shoulder, it was covered in blood and shit.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
And she began to lecture us about burying her before she was passed. And I was so upset. Sorry. And I remember feeling death, the entity of death, outside my bedroom. And I heard my mother's voice as I was awake and frozen, with my eyes open, say, "It's not her time, you can't have her. Leave her alone." And was fighting with him and told him to leave. And then the phone rang and I came completely out of it. And it was 5 a.m. in the morning, and my father had called me from work to tell me that he was supposed to wake me up to stop what was happening to me. At that,
Good.
one of them
Right.
that I went through. I've got a big bucket of it for you guys if you ever want. But yeah, I've always known.
Did your parents have gifts? Like, is it, yeah, so it's normal for your family. Okay.
Yeah, my mother always saw spirits. She kept it within the realms of religion, the practicing religion that we were, because I was born and raised LDS growing up. But I've expanded. There's much more out there. But that's just one. Had a lot like this entire life. I've been in a haunted house, a hotel, with my family that my aunt purchased, that I remember seeing spirits up on a split staircase with red carpeting and red curtains everywhere, and the whole damn thing was red. And my cousins screaming because there was people downstairs that they thought was my uncle, and it wasn't. It was some other old guy. And then everybody was outside working on the grounds, and my cousin was in sleeping, and it caught fire. And we got my cousin out, but the place burnt to. So my entire life has been good, bad, ugly, all the paranormal.
Yeah, I
So I
would say
apologize. Don't mean to
that's
cry.
okay. No, the majority of mine has been good, except for the couple that were bad, and they were really bad. But you need to share.
You do.
Since I've never had children, what age do you usually take a child out of a crib?
Probably around 3
Okay.
at the very latest.
So between 2 and 3 then. This is the one I remember the most. So I had a bedroom, and it had a closet, but instead of a closet, Dad had built, it was really deep. So my dad had put like a platform in there where I could crawl up on, and it was my bed. I had a bed, but he made me another bed that I can close curtains. And so it was my snuggie space. And I had a light in there. I had a little, and it was just like I could hide from the world in there and read my books. And
That's so funny.
so that was my space. And so it had ties, and my mom would always tie back the curtains. And when I remember it must have been, no, I was the first girl in 56 years in my family.
Wow.
So there was I remember little girls in there, but I don't remember who they are. I must have been my dad's friends, kids, and we'd all play in there, and we could close the curtains and tell each stuff, it was just fun. It was fun. But I remember it had a very, really, my dad built, and I remember really big window, and then there was this very narrow hallway, and then their bedroom. So their bedroom was right next to mine, and my brother's was right past mine. And so I remember looking out the window one time, and there was this giant, and this sounds so stupid, red eyeball filling the whole universe. Was this red eyeball looking in through this window at me. And it absolutely, I still remember it, and I remember being absolutely terrified and screaming, and my mother came to get me, and she saw it. And she looked out the window and just like hid my face so I couldn't see it anymore. It took me in her bedroom and then closed all the blinds. And I remember thinking, oh my God, it's going to get us. Whatever this thing is, it's going to get us. And she kept saying, it's not going to get us. We're safe in the house. And she kept looking like, and then she could actually, like in every window was the red eyeball. And so I remember my brother actually coming into our bedroom, and my brother didn't see any ever. The red eyeball came in, and I guess my dad a lot of, he was in the military, and then he did a lot of civilian search and rescue. So he was Civil Air Patrol, so he's probably out flying. And I remember all of us being in my mom's bed and mom and dad's bed, and mom saying, it's okay. I protected us. It's okay. But I remember her being nervous. And my parents were both cops. And the fact that the psychic and everything else, she was never afraid, ever. Because she knew the outcome of everything. And I remember her being nervous. And I wondered, and that spun my fear. Like my brother couldn't feel that, but because I could. And her nerve spun me. I remember afraid of that all of my life. Like still today, I think about that all of my life. So
do you think that was maybe somebody that was angry at your parents for being cops sent it to them?
No,
or do you think
I don't know
paranormal?
but honestly, here's the deal. So my also wrote for the Twilight Zone and the Night Galaxy and all of those, and we watched them all as kids. Mm-hmm. And so I could have easily picked up on something in a show and spun it. But the fact that she saw it too, because I asked her years later, did you see the eyeball? And she said, I saw the eyeball. It was this ginormous red eye looking in every single window. I have no idea what it was.
Did she ever have an inkling of what it was?
If she did, she never told me. She never. I had asked her a couple of times, did you see? She said yes. And that was the extent of what she would say. And my mom always talked to me through everything. She taught me how, our house was always really active, and we had this was another house. So we moved when I was 6, maybe. I guess I think it was kindergarten when we moved to close to Lake Tahoe. So the house that we bought was this just enormous house. Well, not enormous by today's. Right, so it was 30 square feet. That seems big, but well, yeah, right.
Yeah,
so
that's
like
big.
This house, 200 square feet. It's the basement. Mm-hmm. It's finished, so it makes it, So it had 7 bedrooms, and so that house was really active, but we didn't know why. And then we found out that it had been a senior care facility that was made into a house, and then we bought it. And so, yeah, a lot of people died in there. So we had a lot of activity, but my mom she knew like all of this stuff, and she knew everything. But for her not to understand, or at least ever articulate what that thing was, scared the shit out of me my whole life.
Maybe she didn't know exactly, but had the feeling it was not good.
Or just like the evil eye, right?
Yeah.
Like
That's
what everyone protects.
Yeah.
Evil eye, but not good evil, but actual.
Right.
That's what's bothered me my whole life. It's like, why didn't you tell me? Why couldn't you tell me what this thing was? Because it was such a profound experience in my life at such a young age. What was this thing?
Do you think she felt that if you guys talked about it back?
I wonder.
I don't know. Maybe. I think she put up every protection she had in the planet that she could draw on, because she was incredibly gifted, that she really just threw up protection on that house. I know that she protected my dad. He flew almost every single day. Mm-hmm. You're going to have something happen when you fly that much. had as many hours passed as most commercial airline pilots have.
That's crazy.
Yeah. He flew every single day. So she was always protecting him. Right. And so I'm sure she protected us. It wasn't long after that. So at the same time, my dad was he was a cop. And so he had a narcotics dog. He was a shepherd. His name was One Each, because there was a huge litter dumped at the airport, and all of the pilots, one each, got a puppy. They all took a puppy each. And so he was a German. You could tell he was purebred. He was beautiful. He was probably almost, my bloodhounds were about, my big ones were about 135 pounds around. This dog was massively bigger.
Oh, wow.
Big, black German Shepherd. And he was a narcotics dog. And back in the day, when you trained a narcotics dog, you gave them dope. So they went a little nutsy. So I remember right after that with the eye, and it could have been within the same week, that my brother we all went to Disneyland, because we always went to Disneyland. And my brother had a sleepover with a couple of his buddies in the front room. And I remember same period of time. I was little, and I always used to in the hall and get better every night. So years later, my brother would scatter like fake spiders in the hallway, and that kept me in my bedroom because I wouldn't want to run across the spiders. And I think my parents finally said we couldn't even move her. She needs to sleep in her bed. But so I remember being in bed with my mom, and I think it was within a couple of days of the eyeball, and somebody was trying to break into our house. We had to patch bullet holes on the side of our house to sell it because they were cops in a very bad part of town in LA County. Okay. So somebody was trying to break into the house, and my dad was gone, and One Each was home. And my dad had put like duct tape around his tags so they wouldn't jiggle. So my mom, I remember looking out the living room window and seeing somebody standing there. And I told my mom, I'd run down the hall and looked, and then I went in her bedroom and said, somebody's outside. And so she had let the dog out the back door, and then within like 30 seconds, you heard the most blood-curdling scream as that dog tried to devour who was outside our house. Yeah. So was the eye protective? I don't know. I don't feel like
get that sense that it was
I
protective.
think it was menacing.
Mm-hmm.
I was terrified of the eye.
Could it have been with that person that was trying to get in the house?
I never thought about that.
Like associated with? Like, because you know how intention can create actual entities.
I just remember it being an enormous bright red eye. Mm-hmm. Now, was that on a night gallery or Twilight Zone or something that I saw?
Yeah,
but my mom saw it.
Your mom.
She saw it.
Yeah.
Those are some things to ponder.
I don't know.
You can ask your mom.
You had something.
Oh, I was with the non-human and all of that. Everything you see on TV has a thread of truth in
Yes,
it.
it does.
And I was working with a family that had, for all intents and purposes, a demon. A really, really bad one. And people...
And that's exceedingly rare.
It's super rare. But it's more common than I thought it was. But it's super rare. We actually investigated the American Falls at one point, one of the houses, but they were having people in their family die. And Mark worked on this together.
And more have died.
Yeah, Mark and I have worked on this together. And it was non-human, some type of similar to what you would call like dragon energy, but it was something that an ancestor had bartered with.
In the land.
And had, well, if you do this for me, sacrifices out of the family. I don't know.
Here's the deal: never barter.
No.
Never barter with your life.
No. or other people's.
Other people's lives.
Because it's usually not the person who barters. It's people they love. But anyhow, so I was working with these people and this thing was not very happy about it. And my phone would post randomly on Facebook and it would say, hi. And then the signature thing on the bottom of it, and it would say Gina. So my Facebook would post, hi, Gina.
I remember all of
Do you
that.
remember this now?
I remember this story.
So one night, 3-something, my phone goes off. And I open my phone up and it's my son, who literally, we're in a house where you walk down the hall and it's bedroom, bedroom, bathroom, bedroom. Literally, I can stand in my doorway, touch the bedroom across, touch the bathroom, one step, touch where my son's door.
Right.
Like all right there. He doesn't have a door because he had a temper when he was in school and broke his door. And so I took out hinges and got rid of it. So he had a blanket. And he's hysterical screaming. He was quite like 18, 19 years old. And I go in there and he's like, why didn't you answer me? Why didn't you answer me? And I said, I did. You just messaged me. He goes, Mom, I've been screaming help. You could not have not heard it, but I didn't hear it. I'm like, what is going on? He goes, son is pounding on his door. And it was shaking the door. Mom, and it was like 3 pounds. I think it's something bad. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's nothing. So like his door and her door have a 2 feet gap between them. I open her door up. She's sound asleep. The cat's sound asleep. I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, nothing, just checking. Everything's fine. So I sit and talk and it's okay. Don't worry about it. Goes off in the other room. And I go and look at it, and it's one of my friends, and they're like, well, hi, Gina. What are you doing up this late? Apparently it posted at 3:13, which I love 3:13, and 13 is very lucky for me. But at 3:13, it posted, hi, Gina, as my status on Facebook. And so my friend had commented back. And I'm like, okay, enough. This is stupid. So we finally get back to bed. The next night, I get a text message, and it wakes me up at 3 o'clock. It is my daughter. Mom, something's pounding on TJ's door and it's like slamming his door. He doesn't have a door. But she heard the door shaking and pounding. He's sound asleep now. He heard nothing. Ding! There goes my phone. Are you up again tonight? Wow. Hi, Gina. And I lost my ever-loving mind and I got so furious. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Do not come in my house. Do not bother my family. And I didn't literally get the message, like a text message, but I got, so is it really worth it for you to help this family?
Ooh.
And I did. It didn't do any good because the family continued with their behaviors and serious behaviors, drug addiction, alcoholism, abortions, domestic violence, and people continued to pass and it was terrible. But yeah, that one, but it did not come back to my house again but it was, and that was something Mark had helped me to discern, is this thing had been attached to the family for over 100 years. Oh. And somebody got something, bartered something, and the future generations were paying for it.
And they will continue. Yeah, that's spooky shit right there.
Yeah. Yeah. But especially where when my son heard it, my daughter didn't hear it, I didn't hear it. When my daughter heard it, he didn't even have a door. And he didn't hear it, and I didn't hear it. We're all just like literally like this distance from each other. And to have it post. But yeah, we haven't had that posting on my Facebook. But yeah, there's all kinds of bizarre things
just
out there.
Just be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
And don't trade your soul for anything.
Or especially that of your families.
Right. Well, I think a lot of times people don't realize their family comes along with it.
Well, like, have you watched the movies where they have genies and you make a wish?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's like everything comes with a price.
Right.
And so I don't know if this ancestor because it was bizarre. Some of the passings were bizarre, and they had happened in different generations.
Right.
Almost the identical thing.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, we hope you like this episode. And stay tuned for more fun with Speaking of Spirits.
You've been listening to Speaking of Spirits, powered by Pocatello Paranormal Research in Pocatello, Idaho. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad you could be here. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do us a favor and go to whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on and give us a review. We prefer the 5-star reviews. This helps us know how we're doing, and it helps others to find the podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next podcast.